Hello, welcome to DM Talk, episode 37. Wonderful episode, 37 episodes of DM Talk. What's DM Talk? DM Talk is where I talk about anything, or I talk about a certain subject matter, D&D, gaming, in the gaming world whatsoever. This is DM Talk. Tonight, we're going to talk about something very cool, and it's elements in your campaign. What makes your element? What is your element? What is the element of a campaign, story, or whatnot? The campaign is your big train. That train that's on the rails and on the tracks, and it keeps going. Your campaign is massive. Some campaigns end at level 8. Because level 8 is they're still at decent hit points, and let's face it, characters go to level 9 and 10 and so on. Their hit points are massive, and things are so big that you're almost gods or superheroes. I don't want to say gods, but that is a campaign. A campaign is something that you start with a simple story and it blows up to be something bigger than life, or much bigger. Season 2, I wanted a more grounded campaign. Season 1 was more, superhero stuff, massive swords and weapons and all this crazy crap. But Season 2, I wanted more of a grounded element and an emotion. A connection. And as I mentioned in the recap, Lila Ordell is the center of the campaign. Center of the side stories, center of everything. What makes her so important? Well, in the game, she's called the Gift. And I mentioned that in the recap. And you all should know that she is an important, integral part in the main plot. Now, for DMs, for game masters, storytellers, I like to mention different versions because it's not just Dungeons & Dragons, it's role-playing in general. A story is a story, right? It is. A campaign could be in Dungeons & Dragons, it can be in Cyberpunk, it can be in Star Wars, it can be whatever game that you want to run. And when you sit here and write a good story, there's got to be some form of element. What is your element of the story? What makes your story? What drives your story? Is it the NPCs? Is it the setting? It can be the setting. It could be, a mystery situation. You're on the train, and that's a great idea, having a mystery on a train, and it moves on, and the campaign is solely in the train. And the player characters are trying to figure out why races are being murdered, and now you are part of the mystery. And what is that element? The element is the mystery. What is the mystery? What drives that campaign? And I like to say element because an element is a piece of a cog. Two cogs together, it moves, right? A cog doesn't spin on its own. You have two cogs, and it spins. It makes the other cogs move. Element of a story is the same thing. There's got to be a beginning, middle, and end. Granted, we all know that. Simple storytelling. But the element is just as important. You could have your beginning, middle, and end, and if you don't have an element of the story, your story is going to fail. That's just my opinion. Other writers, other folks can give you other opinions, but I'm giving you mine. And I'm telling you an element of story, without it, you're doomed. Gotta have an element, gotta have that force. What drives your story? Or it's gonna be boring. If you're gonna have a mystery, per se, in a train, right? And if the story is about this villain that's poisoning people on the train, and your heroes are on the train, and there's a lot of role-playing, which is great. I'm up for role-playing. a lot of chit chat, but there's nothing to drive that story. There's no element. You don't see, a young woman grabbing her throat and choking and coughing, blood is spewing out of her mouth, and her falling to her death. And everybody's like, oh, she was poisoned. There's something afoot. That's the beginning of a story, beginning of a campaign, an element. Oh, Henry, you're mistaken. You don't know what an element is. Yes, I do. There's many elements to a story. And one of them is the driving force of that story. If there is no element, if you have no driving force, there is no story, folks. There isn't no story. You can be here all day and have a humdrum mystery with no element. You can role play all day and make the game about role play. Role play. Yeah. But there's no story. You ever been to a movie? And in that movie, you are watching that boring movie and you're so bored you want to leave. There's great actors, there's good acting, but it's boring. You know why it's boring? Because there's no element, there's no drive. It doesn't move. There's got to be a flow. There's a flow in everything, right? And that element, remember I mentioned the cogs. A cog alone cannot move. There's multiple cogs that move together in unison, making a wonderful, beautiful story. And if you don't have that element, that driving force in that story, you're not gonna do anything. You're not. I love storytelling. I love telling a story. I love writing. I love writing so much I have carpal tunnel in both of my hands. My thumbs hurt. My hands hurt. It's a pain, but I love writing. I do. But the thing is, when you write these things, you have to just say, well, I'm writing a story arc of, multiple dungeons, and there's a maze, and there's a big evil giant org. Then what is the element of that story? Why is that org there? Are they going for treasure? Are they stealing something from the org? What is the org protecting? The sword of whatever. The sword of the blade, right? It could be any name. The sword of the skies, the sword of dance, the sword of fire, the liquefied sword, whatever. It could be anything. The org is protecting a special item that these player characters are up against, are going to find eventually. They were just adventuring in the dungeon, and there's an org protecting something. Why is that org protecting it? Why is that org attacking so desperately, angrily? You gotta remember, folks, when you have a game and that game is boring, that's on you, the DM. That's on you, the GM. That's on you, the storyteller. That's on you, the referee. Whatever you want to call yourself, that's on you. I understand that people are tired. They get tired. And they have their characters now on phones instead of a sheet. And there's some players that I have that have both, and that's fine. But gotta remember, folks, when you sit there and you have a foundation, you sit there, the players are playing their characters, they're going into a dungeon, they're going to a castle, they're going into a forest, they're going into a train, whatever setting you have as DM, and Construction is part of elements. Remember I mentioned the cogs. To me, constructing elements little by little make up that story. Remember, elements are part of the story. Like the cogs, each cog has a certain purpose. And when you have a foundation, you lay, when you lay concrete, there's got to be that first, smooth base. Simple as pie. You got to lay something. There's a foundation, the beginning. You got to have some cogs that make the main cog move. It shapes the story. What makes different elements wonderful? Well, you have in the side story, the 6-part story arc, morality. Morality was a big deal because, let's face it, folks, you want to play an evil campaign, and everybody wants to play evil, but when it comes down to it, when the DM puts you in a situation that you want to go ahead and just burn the town or slaughter them, morality sits in. Oh, I'm just going to do it. No, you're not. Make a wisdom check. Really? Why? I thought this was an evil campaign. Yeah, what's your alignment? Oh, okay. You still make a roll. Morality sits in. Depending on your alignment. If you're lawful good, if you're neutral, if you're chaotic neutral. Even if you're a chaotic neutral and you have these little quirks, you're still going to have a form of morality. Unless you are evil. Complete evil. Which nobody in the campaign was. Chaotic evil is a whole new ballgame. Chaotic neutral, they have their own set of morals, but you still have to roll. Other DMs can make their own call, but with me, you're going to roll. They had morality. In the beginning, they were a gung-ho, and then, coup, and boom. They turned good. They were good guys at the end of the 6-part story arc. What does that say about evil? Not too good, right? Evil characters have their own sense of morality. And it's not true evil, folks. Let's get this straight. You're not playing a campaign or a story arc of chaotic evil. You mention it, and if you are, you mention it to your players. You're playing chaotic evil, period. If you're not going to play that type of character, don't play him. But there's morality involved. These guys were bad. Things happen. Moral values. Morality set in. Those are elements to a story. What was the element to harsh reality? The elements of it. The main cog was, okay, you have these individuals going into town. They had to kill the leader of Order of the Light. What was the element of that story? Morality. Was it? Yes, it was, because towards the end, they became good. Morality was that cog that drove the story. When they killed, when they fought, they thought about what they did. They didn't senselessly, they didn't go into places and slaughter people because they wanted to. In the beginning, it was like that. But it changed because of morality, because of the decisions that they were making. And they focused on those decisions and decided to change their methods a bit. And then come full circle. to ask yourself, how do characters like that play out that way? Not everybody can fire a pistol. Not everybody can grab a basketball and shoot hoops. Not everybody can play baseball. Not everybody can be a NASCAR driver. Not everybody can do those things. So let's go back into the psyche of these individuals, of these characters in harsh reality. Why did they change? Ask yourself this. And the main element, like I said, the main element of the story was morality and why it changed. Because if morality was pulled out, it would just be a slaughter fest. It would be just slaughter, slaughter, slaughter. There would be no story. It would be boring. If I wanted to see that, I would watch boxing, where there is no story. Two fighters go up against each other, two boxers go up against each other, and they fight. And the winner takes all. You gotta have an element to your story. You cannot just leave that out. Like I said, the foundation, like I said, the construction of the story. I constructed Harsh Reality, the 6-part story arc, with knowing this. I did not know 100% if they were gonna turn to good. But in my stories, there's always consequences. When you kill somebody, you do something, you're a good character, you do something wrong, there are consequences. If you're playing a character who's a little on the bad side and you do something wrong, the consequences are going to be very different. It's going to be a struggle on you. Because, again, oh yeah, you're a big bad. You went into town, multiple towns, and you destroyed a lot of people. Killed a lot of people, but then something changed you. Maybe it was a baby in the wagon. Maybe it was a beautiful woman in the wagon that you saw that you could not slaughter. Anything goes. So ask yourself, what is your element in your story? Oh, well, I'm doing time travel. Great. How does that play out? How does that start? Oh, that starts in the forest. You know, there was a pile of rocks, and it was a circle around the pile of rocks, and it started to glow, and all of a sudden I look, and I'm in a different location. Yeah, you're thinking it's teleportation. Yeah, it is, but you're now in a different realm. It's a little bit like Dimension Door, but a lot worse. Somehow you got banished somewhere else. Oh wait, you're in 9 hells. Now you gotta figure out a way to get out. Folks, a story in any game, in any book, there is elements part of the story. Elements are very much the core of your story. You could say, oh, an element can be anything. And you're right, it could be anything. But it's that part that constructs your story. In my game, I have a lot of NPCs, a lot of characters, but my main NPC is Lila Ordell. She's one of those cogs that drives the story. There is so much that you can do with those elements. You could sprinkle them. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say a party is in a forest. Let's go back to the time travel thing. They see a bunch of rocks. They see a circle of light in the center of the forest. But they see that around the forest, there are no longer trees. There are supposed to be trees in a forest, right? No, they find themselves in a very different location. They find themselves in a different place. There are rock formations instead of trees, and they're in a mountainside this time. Hang on one second. I'm checking out my streaming. Okay, my streaming's doing good. Okay, good. Let's continue. So let's go back to the time travel. They were in the forest disappears, now there's rock formations, then they realize, oh, there's still markings on the ground, or there's still rocks, but they realize the rocks are very different from each other. How different? A rock is a rock, right? Well, one is not a rock. It looks like a rock, but it isn't. It's steel. What do you mean steel? It's made to look like a rock, but it isn't. What? But it's not a rock. Go to grab it. It doesn't glow. It moves like a handle of some kind. So now you're like, oh, it's a trap, but you're not a rogue. You're a fighter, so what do? So you slide it or do whatever. When that happens, something opens up. Oh, trap. The circle doesn't activate, but everything around you does. The circle doesn't light up. The surrounding starts to spin. You see trees, you see rock formations, you see buildings, you see cave structures, you see multiple different scenarios. It's like turning pages in a book. It happens so quickly, you get that. That's what you get. You turn from one page to another, and you realize you're like, holy shit, what do I do now? Well, you let go of the rock. That element, that little sprinkle is just that. Time travel. You're throwing that element in there. You go back to the forest. Oh, that piece changed my surrounding. So the party investigates. So they move carefully. So they look around and they find this table. And that table that they see, they have the same thing. They've got the ground, that circle. It's like a map. It mirrors what they just did, but it's on a piece of wood. Interesting. So they move the pieces. They go back to the center, and everything's different. So what is the element? The element, is time travel. The element are the little pieces on that board. They move things. So you're putting pieces of the story, the elements of the story, in the story. You are manufacturing, you're constructing, you're building, and you're adding more cogs. You're creating more things to do to keep the party entertained, keep the party amused, to keep the audience too. You want to bring them in. How you do that? Oh, you're doing clues in that. No, you're not. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a writer and a storyteller. You are sprinkling elements into your story. Little parts that make up, that construct a story, that give you the opportunity to deliver it in a way that people could enjoy, laugh at, not like it. What I mean by not liking it, they don't like the villain or whatnot. They can enjoy things, they can watch things, they can look at something that they're reading and literally say, that's awesome. Or they could throw it down and say, damn, that didn't make any sense. But here's the thing. When you have elements to the story, it pulls the reader in, or it pulls audience in too. You have those elements that pulls everybody in, that pulls them in, that brings them to that story. We could talk about other elements that make up a story. You could talk about MacGuffin. You could talk about a whole bunch of different things that make up a story, because there's so much that makes up a story that the storyteller, the writer, DM, referee constructs. There are books and resources that you can do and read and say, hey, you got to do this. You got to put in a beginning, a middle, and an end and do that. Who says you have to do that? The professionals? Yeah, they say, yeah, do it that way. But what if you want to do things differently? Oh, then your story is going to get derailed. Try it out. In one of my episodes, I tried something very different. And I went out. I went out of the box. I said, okay, I'm gonna make a whole episode about a trap, a water trap. And it was successful. They all enjoyed it. I was sweating because I'd never done that before. I said, you know what, I'm gonna try something different. Normally I have things flowing and they move from one location to another, yada, yada, yada. But here's the thing. When they're stuck in one location and there's a strong element, strong presence, strong, what's the word I'm looking for? When there's things to do in that story, when they are entertained, when they are using their noggin to do something in that story, you're doing the right thing. I don't care what source books say, what they read. Source books don't talk to you. Hey, I don't care what they read. It's all up to you. You are the DM. You are the writer. You're the storyteller. You are the person crafting, laying the foundation for everyone to enjoy. Is it easy? Absolutely not. It's not easy to do that. And anybody who says it's easy is full of shit, because it's not. You can sit here and talk the talk, but when you actually are behind the screen, DM, referee, storyteller, whatever game, a role-playing game you're playing, or wherever you're writing, it's different when you have something written and then you're telling the story through your words, descriptions, and now the players have to catch on with your descriptions, your story, the elements, everything. Everyone has to catch on. What is the main idea for your story? If your main idea for your story is death, if your main idea for your story is love, hate, whatever it is, bring it in, put it in. If you have two themes, two ideas that are in the story, bring it in. The more, the merrier. And if you can't use them in this episode or in that scene, use them later on. As long as you have notes, written information that you will use it later on. Because trust me, those players that you have at your table will catch on. And when they know the way you do things and the way you're story oriented, you're focused on role playing, you're focused on different elements that pulls you in the story, they know that and they want that. So when you don't give it to them, they're kind of like, Say what you will. A story is not just a story. A story is only as good as you tell it, as you write it. And if you write a story with good elements, a good beginning, middle, and end, you craft a good foundation, those are the things that make up a story. And if you don't have those things, it's going to fall apart. When you're laying bricks, you know, there's a way of doing that. There's a way of doing everything. Put a chain on the bike, you know, put it around, loosen it up, put the chain around the bike, or the, you know, the prickly things, whatever they're called. But either way, put the chain around there and you're fine. There's a way of doing things. Basically, that's what I'm trying to tell you, is there's a way of doing things. You just don't sit here and just say, I'm just going to throw the chain around, or I'm going to throw the bricks and they're going to form each other. They're going to lay there and they're going to be in great position, because they're not going to be in great position. They're not at all. Ask yourself, what is it that makes a good story? For you, is it comedy? Is it role playing? You like role playing a lot? Oh, you know, I like an intriguing story, but I like the camaraderie between NPCs, and that's fine. But the story is what catches your eye. Because that NPC may say, you know, my family was taken by the goblins. They were taken by the goblins, and I need a band of heroes to help me out. I don't have a lot of money, but I can get a hold of more money. I want to give you 50 each, silver, and I'll get more when you return. If they decide to take the adventure or story arc, they go into the catacombs and they try to find the family of this merchant, of this individual that lives in town. Simple as pie. You have your hooks, you have your element. What is the element? The element is finding the family. That's the element right there. It's a rescue. That's your element. That's your rescue. You want to rescue. Remember that. And your role playing goes between, what is that? That guy is kind of shifty. Or maybe he's not telling you a full story. So when they go into the catacombs to find the goblins, they realize that the goblins are not just 10, but hundreds. And they're not going to be as easy as the adventure set out to be. So now they're in a difficult situation. And what are you going to do? What are they going to do? And if that element isn't strong enough, then that whole story is going to fall apart. You can have combat the whole game. I want to get my drink of water. You can have combat the whole game. Thank you. You can have combat the whole game. And if your story, if your element isn't right, if that connection, that bridge, that foundation, that construction isn't right, it's going to fail. You can have, I'm going to do what the source books say. I want to have 3 rounds of combat and that's it. Oh, really? Okay, that's kind of boring. It is boring, folks. Thank you. Gotta get some water. Anyways, it is boring. Because how about this? They fight, and that's it, 3 rounds, boom. My games are usually 4 hours and 30 minutes. Sometimes I will go a little bit over 5 hours. Anything over 5 hours in a game, it's kind of rough. But it can happen. Sometimes it does happen. So, let's go back with the goblins. The player characters, the adventurers, went into town, and this guy tells them, I'll give you 50 gold pieces now each, or 50 silver. When you come back, I'll give you more. I'll give you more money. Right now, I need you to save my family in a town with the goblins in these caves, or I'm sorry, catacombs, and there's goblins there. They ask them, they do a history check, they do an investigation. I'm sorry, they do brain fart. They do a intimidation on him, and the adventurers, they say they get shitty rolls. They don't get the information, but they do get an insight roll, and they notice that there's something in his mannerism that's not right. So one of the player characters follows him to his house, the building not too far from the tavern. That's where they meet. That's where all the guilds go in and get their adventures, or so forth. So, anyways, this guy goes to his house, and as he goes to his house, you see something very odd. There's nobody in his house. He's probably living alone. But you would think, well, he has his lantern, he goes in his house, and you hear a noise, a crashing noise, a struggle. So what do? So now the one player gets his buddies and says, hey, we gotta help this guy. We just took his money, but something's going on in here. So they go in. They go in and they fight this doppelganger. It looks like the guy. They're like, holy shit, what's going on? So they manage to defeat the doppelganger, but instead of killing him, they want to extract information, which is fine. There is your element, there is your hook, there is your mystery, because now, they got a story, an adventure. They went and got some money from this guy, unknown guy. He said, I got a family in the catacombs that were taken by the goblins. I need help. Okay, he seemed like a cool dude. But then something was up. You're giving him more elements. Boom, something was up. So they went ahead, or one of them went ahead and followed. Something happened in his house. It was a struggle. The guy was on the ground. Then there's a doppelganger. They defeated the doppelganger. They extract information, but it looks like the guy. What's going on? That's the hook right there. That's the element. Even though the doppelganger is an NPC, and the guy, that individual is an NPC, he is still an element of that story. And a very good one, because right now, they're going to get information, whether it's good or bad. Information, it's up to you. You can write bad information, you can write good information, you can write whatever it is. So they find out that the doppelganger is the one that has his family, not the goblins. But the guy that's on the ground sold his family to another faction. And what is the faction? A band of pirates, right? A band of thieves. You could have a band of evil individuals, let's say. Doesn't matter what it is. I'm coming up with this out of my head right now. So now you realize that these individuals are pretty nasty, and the guy was out of money, he was out of options, so he sold his family. Pretty shitty, right? So now the party has morality. So you look at the party members, some of them are lawful good. You got 4. 2 of them, 1 of them is lawful good. Then you have a neutral, then you have chaotic neutral, and you have one that's another neutral. So you have a mix of a party. Some might be, my thumb is killing me. Some might be good. Some might have different decision making. Some might be on the good side. I just told you lawful good, chaotic neutral, yada yada yada. Doesn't matter. The whole point is they have different alignments. So now there's morality involved. There are things that they're thinking about right now. Oh, wait a second. This guy is a turd. So what do? They could kill him, take more of his money, or move on. I've been in games where if I would have it like that, they would take the money, follow him to his house, knock him out, and then take the money and leave. I mean, if that's what they want to do, got to remember the 4 members of the party, okay? 3 are going to be on morality, 1's going to be like, F you. That's just the way it is. So now you have a conflict of interest, which is good on your favor, because now there's role playing that's going to set in. Now there's going to be a situation because there's death in a town that you just walked into. And all you wanted to do is get a job, get some money, so you can buy provisions and move on and live like everyone else. But now you are in deep shit because now there is a major death in a party. Major death, not in a party, an NPC that gave you money out of the goodness of his heart because he needed his family, but you didn't know of the situation. When you found out, it doesn't really matter because the doppelganger is a doppelganger. And right now, either you're going to have to come up with something to tell the magistrate of the town or run. So there's a lot of decision making. So an adventure of going into goblin territory would have been cool, right? Yeah, it would have. But it's boring. Oh, the guy that gave you the money is hiding something. There's a guy in the corner that's watching you in the tavern as you decided to take this adventure to save the family from the evil, devious goblins, and then finding out that there's a doppelganger that looks like the guy, and you ended up killing him. And then realize that the guy you remember you saw at the tavern looking at you, well, the doppelganger had a partner. And that partner has other NPCs. And alas, you have a story. Alas, you have your groundwork, you have your construction, you have the elements of the story, your cogs are moving, and you have a wonderful piece to work with. Now, the player's turn. They move. They decide. They roll. They use their spells. They use their items. They use their weapons. They use their noggin to deal with every situation that you, as a DM, puts up. Now, is this going to be for everyone? Absolutely not. Not everyone is going to go that route. Not everyone is going to follow that guy. Not everyone's going to make an insight roll. Not everyone is going to catch on to that. They're not. Want to know why? Because that's just the way it works. That's role playing. You're not reading a book. You remember the books? I've loved these books. Follow Your Own Adventure, where you read and it says turn to page 15. If you make this choice, turn to page 30. Oh, it's awesome. I guarantee you, writing those type of books is probably a bitch, because you have to write the outcome for each decision that that reader makes. And role playing is the same way. You write every decision, but not every decision you have to write. Maybe write some notes. If you know that the party, and let's go back to the scenario of that individual, of that person in the tavern who hired the players, the heroes. to save his family from the goblins. And then the doppelganger and all that stuff came in. Those are the things that come up. And when you have a story like that and the players make a decision for the beginning, not everybody's going to go where you have, breadcrumbs. Not everybody's going to go. Not everybody's going to see them. Not everyone is going to follow that individual to his home and see a doppelganger. But let's say that never happened. But they saw the guy in the bar looking at them. So they're either going to address that guy or just leave it be. And if they leave it be, then they move on. But then they're being followed to the cave or to the catacombs to find the goblins. They're being followed. And they look, and there's about 10, 20 guys. That's a big group of fucking guys. So they're following you, and now the story sticks. Then they start questioning themselves, questioning the mission. Man, maybe we should get out of here. Why are they following us? So there's a big fight that ensues. But the odds are, it's too much. They're outnumbered, and they know it. So they run. They run into the cave, or they leave. If they go towards the men, it's going to be bad because there's going to be more, or there's a lot of hell to pay. So they force themselves to go into the cave. So then they find the family. The family says, they're like, wait a second. You're supposed to be a wife and daughter and brother and sister? Nope, they're a bunch of guys. And they say the guy was a swindler. You were supposed to come to the cave, and then are these this catacombs. You're supposed to come here, and we were supposed to take your things. So why are you not taking them now? Because I'm not taking your items right now, because now there is a problem. The bigger problem is the situation that we're in. What kind of situation we're in? Well, as they walked in, the rocks, that entrance to the cave, moved and closed them in. They said, well, that's the problem. They said, what do you mean? You ever play a game where you have a mouse in a maze and the mouse is trying to get out? No? Well, that's kind of like what's happening to us. We're in a maze and can't get out. What do you mean you can't get out? We have no food, we have no weapons. You have some rations on you, and we're gonna... So anyways, they get the information from these individuals, and they have a big battle, they fight, and the heroes win, of course, but now they're in the same predicament as that group, is those people, the swindlers. They're like, They know they have a doppelganger, they know they have a big group outside, but they killed them instead of getting more information out of them. Or let's say they get information from one or two of them. Let's say they didn't kill all the baddies. So they left two of them, and they got information, and there's a way out of here. They know it. But it's a days away from here. So now they're hesitant, but they're going to have to go through the cave. But along the way, you have creatures. You have goblins, you have dragons, or whatever, not even a dragon, wildlings or wormlings, the smaller ones. You have different scenarios that you can put them into that make it dangerous for them to make it a Dungeons and Dragons game, a fantasy setting, an element, the foundation, the drive that puts those characters in the game, that make them flow, that the struggle, the morality, all those things are elements elements to your story. And like I said it before, and I'll say it again, the elements of your story is the core, folks. It's the core. And I'm going to give you more examples, but that's the major one. How are you going to fundamentally tell your story without those elements? Oh, I started my game. I met this one guy in a tavern, and in the tavern, looking at my numbers real quick, looking good, recording good. All right. So I walk into a tavern, and this guy wants to give me gold or silver. Will pay me later, 50 each. Wow. The other guy goes, yeah, okay, we'll take it. What do? No role playing's involved. They don't look around. They don't give a shit. And you could say, that's the players. Well, the players look bored. Instead of having music, put music in your setting. You know, look at different individuals in the tavern. What are they doing? They're drinking or talking, and you have tavern music. Those are elements that are sprinkled in to intensify a scene. When you do that, it brings the players in your game even more. Trust me, it works. And instead of having that humdrum exchange for the mission, now you have them enjoying themselves. Could get ale, could look around, and do what? Role play, get involved with the story, and those elements will bring ultimately a great story. Your players will be happy for it, and so will you. You will enjoy it. There are times when I sit back and watch my guys role play. They talk back and forth. Those are the best times where you can sit and watch. Sometimes it's 5 minutes, sometimes it's 10 minutes, sometimes it's even a little longer. Other times, you might get a little snicker here and there, laugh between what I said. They enjoy playing the game. They enjoy the scenes, the scenarios that I have for them, and that you will have for your party, for your people, for your group. Doesn't matter if you're playing Dungeons and Dragons or Cyberpunk. Doesn't matter if your story is in a train, in a forest, in a mountaintop, inside a cave, inside a small town. You're a bunch of orphans. It doesn't matter if you are in those places. What matters is the element. What are the things that make up your foundation? How do you construct your story? How do you make things just good enough? It doesn't have to be epic. Just make it good enough. So that scene that you have between NPC and player, that camaraderie, that exchange is wonderful. And those pieces, like I mentioned, examples, cogs, one cog moves the other and it continues on. That story will flow. You'll have a good beginning, a middle, and an end. And it doesn't matter if it's in a train. It doesn't matter if it's in a forest. It doesn't matter what type of setting you have. What matters is the how, the why, the if. There's got to be elements. Why are those things there? Why is the guy in that tavern giving silver pieces or gold, whatever, to the players? because his family's lost and he needs somebody to find him. And he's too much of a coward to go out and do it himself. So he's going to hire people. That's one element. 2, there is an exchange. A brutal struggle, an exchange between 2 individuals. The man you met in the tavern and a doppelganger. Element 2. Element 3, you find out there's more of these individuals. They're now looking for something or someone. So now you have to make a decision. Do you go to the cave and continue this mission, or do you leave? But if you try to leave, you notice that the individuals are all together. More than one, 10, 15 of them, maybe 20, whatever. However you want to play it out. Those are the elements of your story. But you're like, aren't they called something different, Henry? Nah, well, whatever. Those are story elements. You can look up what an element is. Here, let's look up really quick what an element is. Element to a story. The key elements of a story are generally considered to be character, setting, plot, conflict, and theme. There you go. These elements work together to shape the narrative and create a compelling story. Folks, the element of a story. There you go. The cogs. Like I said, the conflict. You have that conflict. You have those things. You have those characters are placed in the setting. You could have a setting, but without those elements, you're done. What are your elements? What makes the construction of your story? The foundation, those elements, those cogs, those examples I gave you. I mentioned characters, I mentioned conflict, I mentioned all those things, those elements in the story. The plot device, as I said here, is very, very interesting because plot devices are what makes up a story as well. But if you don't have that element where it is correctly, then it's going to fall apart. If you don't have these elements right, your story is going to fall apart. Tone, style, all those things, all those elements are important. But the key elements are characterization, plot, conflict, and theme. According to what I'm reading here on Dr. Google, that's what it is. And like I said before, in the beginning of this stream, elements are very important because if you don't have those elements, your story is going to fall apart. And like I said in my own words, not Google's words, I've said the foundation, the shape, the construction of your character, of your story. You have to construct your story. Those cogs that make it move. Those characters I mentioned. The story parts, the elements, the plot, all that is an element. Just remember, when you tell a story, bring everybody together. They could be in a scenario where there's a fireplace, scenario where everybody's smoking, drinking, having a great time, and then all of a sudden the ground starts to shake. They leave the tavern and they look up, and they see a monstrosity, a massive creature. 4 legs, 3 heads, 2 arms, over 30 feet in height. It starts smashing the town. Those are the things you have to think about. Oh, wait a second. Why do I have to have a big creature in the town? It doesn't matter. What matters is how you do it, why you're doing it. Those elements make up the whole story. If you don't have that foundation, you're not going to have a story. Let's go back to that scenario. Okay, so this creature is monstrosities taking out your town. So what are you going to do? The knights are going to come in, they're going to have a battle, they have their bows, they have their swords, and they have a huge battle. And then everything around them collapses because this monstrosity is overwhelming them. But then another town comes in. They have mages, they have warriors, they have plate mail, they have magic. They got a lot. And they defeat this monstrosity. Then they realize that the individuals that came in town had their own ideas, had their own wants and needs. They need this town for positioning. So they gave the governor of this town, they threatened him and said, okay, we saved you from the monstrosity, but now you're going to have to pay taxes to us. What do you mean? So the role-playing sets in. Now you have your plot, you have your story. Those are elements in the game, folks. That's what connects everything together. Like I said before, the shape, foundation. You got to shape your game. Lay the foundation. Construct those elements. Throw them in there. And that's what makes a story. And your story will not suffer. You'll have a good time playing yourself, playing the story as your NPCs or whatnot, and everybody is going to have a good time. And that is all I have for you tonight. I hope you enjoyed DM Talk. Support the stream, support me, support Playerole, support everyone that plays in my group. They're a great group. We'll see you for episode 21 next Saturday, May 3rd. And the group is coming back to the Town of the Light. What will happen? Only time will tell. We're going to see what type of reactions they'll have and what they're going to do. And hopefully it's good. Hopefully it's good. We'll see. I'll see you.